Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you. How you doing?
I'm good. You know, last year, what a year. Like no other, really.
Like no other.
How important for you was it to keep racing?
I think it was incredibly important. If you look at how the year went, if you saw the kind of the noise we were able to make, grab the attention of people. I think also for people who are, all of us were isolated. I think it was really healthy for people to see sports. So I think we had a responsibility, and I'm grateful that we were able to continue.
Is rewriting F1 history important to you?
No. I guess you're talking rewriting history in terms of records.
That would be it.
But I'm more about rewriting or writing the future in terms of diversity inclusion within our sport, because it has always been white dominated and male dominated. And I think it's time for a change. So I'm really grateful to be a part of an era where sport is now being used as a platform for good. I'm starting to see change already.
Well, you never saw anyone that looked like you, right?
No.
Doing the sport that you're the best in the world at.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it was just me and my dad.
yeah, that was in the whole sport.
I'm just so grateful I have my dad by my side, you know? We went through a lot on the way up. And I'm excited for one day to show people that story, because I think people today often see the tip of the iceberg. For anyone that's out there, whoever's story it may be, you only really see the tip of the success, you know, but that's underneath the sea level. There's so much work that went on in the background and so much struggle. And I think that's what people can relate to, because it was normal life, you know.
It's a new season, you know, after a pretty crazy year. How are you and your team preparing for this new racing season?
There's a huge amount going on. So the normal building of a new car, well, the transformation of a 2020 car into this year, it's the first year that we've not had a brand new car because of some rule changes. But a lot of work going on in the background. Last year, obviously, was really about holding people accountable, holding ourselves accountable, and this year's about action. So there's a foundation that we're putting together to really support diversity and inclusion. Where they're hiring from is not going to be the same pool anymore. They're now casting a wider net. And I've also got the Hamilton Commission, which hopefully in the next couple of months will have some real tangible results that we can then take to the sport and all the teams within it, and maybe the sponsors, the partners that are in the sport. So it's a year of action. And on top of that, we've got to try and win.
Yeah, small detail.
And yeah, but it's kind of cool. It's just, I think in the past, I was always winning. I was always chasing that win for personal desire, for my family who believed in me from day one. Now it's an amazing kind of revelation that now I'm like, I realize I can get on top of the podium. I can use that platform to speak for good and to help bring attention to things and empower people.
And the Hamilton Commission, right?
Yeah.
Is extraordinary, because if I'm correct, you're showing the engineering is where people with diverse voices should try, they should see. And, you know, it's not just racing the car, it's a whole industry behind this that is highly paid, that people that look like you and me may never even know existed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, underrepresentation, as you know, is a huge issue. And I think in our industry, and when I came out with this Hamilton Commission, everyone thought, you just want more drivers coming through. The fact is, it's so expensive, and there's only 20 of us. But there are all these incredible jobs in the background, thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs in engineering and aerodynamics, and it's really encouraging youngsters. I mean, if you saw last year in Austria, we had a young black girl that was on the podium with me. It's the first time in 70 years they've had a black female on the podium in Formula One. So, but being able to see that, young girls now are like, oh my God, I could be in Formula One.
It matters.
And it's super, super important,
You do so many things, and you know, you love music and cinema and the arts. What do your passions mean to you?
I think, like you know, I went through school. The things that I excelled at were art, were where I was having to be creative. Like design technology, where I had to design something. when it came to numbers and all those things, being dyslexic, I was really suppressed because I was struggling. I was in all the bottom classes, and I was trying so hard to work my way up, and I was never allowed. Teachers just said you weren't good enough. So, and naturally sport, it's very athletic. What I always discovered is I was just good at things that I could be creative with. So music is a great creative outlet. And that's really been something I've just been tapping into, allowing.
Does it give you an edge as well in terms of your sport? Does your passion in music help you mentally have something that makes you stand apart?
I don't know if it helps me stand apart. I think it's just, in my world that I've came into, they would say that you have to be a driver, you have to be this one thing. You can't do anything else. They kind of put you in a box, you know? And I think I had to, if I would just focus on racing, I would lose my mind.
Okay. So
being able to unwind, be able to tap into something else. I'm not great at all these other things. I'm not great at the guitar, but I love playing. You don't have to be the best at everything, but learning something new, finding new pathways in your mind to release feelings. And that's the great thing with music. You can be vulnerable, you can have attitude, you can be swaggy, you can be a different person if you want to be. And I think that's the beautiful thing with music.
And it doesn't judge you.
Exactly.
You mentioned, and I have to, I get emotional because you mentioned that you have dyslexia, something that I struggle with. It never leaves us, right?
No.
And like you, I really struggled at school, and if it wasn't for the kind of family that we have, maybe we wouldn't have ended up doing what we've done.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you now, knowing that there are boys and girls out there right now that maybe don't believe they're worth much because of their minds are just a little bit different?
Well, I think hopefully you and I and so many out there will show them and hopefully inspire them that they can be still something special. And it is a shame that in the world that going to school, there's a certain way you have to study, and if your mind doesn't work in that way, then you're valued, or you maybe valued less whilst you're in that world. But as they can see from me, my mind works in such a different way. And, for a long, long time was told that I was just, whether it's slow or just not smart enough.
Slow, ironic.
Yeah, but the way my mind computes things and how I'm able to dialogue with and debate with Harvard and Oxford and Cambridge University students, engineers that I work with, that's not someone that's stupid.
Yep.
So I think it's really just encouraging people, encouraging parents particularly, because, also my parents, whilst they supported me incredibly through my career, they didn't understand what dyslexia was. And they're like, you just got to work harder. And then it's a natural, real issue, and something that should be embraced by schools and parents.
I have a few talks coming up with schools and universities, and I'm going to start with saying they told Lewis Hamilton that he was slow. That should get the kids going. Oh boy. So, as you've grown, has the importance of your passions changed? Are there things that you were into when you were a little bit younger that you just have grown out of, or has it always been quite constant? You've always liked music, or is this new?
Yeah. I think the fact is, it's very hard. There's only one of us, right? And that you only have a certain amount of energy, and to master something, it takes tens of thousands of hours of time. And so, unfortunately, no matter what, some other things that you might be passionate about generally fall to the side as seem less important. But music has always been there for me, fortunately. But I would say that I've been doing it more and more as I've learned to have more capacity to be able to divide my time and be more efficient with my time, whether that's with your family, whether it's with your friends, always finding a balance. Like I'm have a serious life, but I always like to have fun, and I think that's so important. It's so important to laugh at least once during your day, otherwise you just go stir crazy. So, and find something you love. And it can be anything. And as I said, you don't have to be the best at it.
No.
When I get back from my day job, I have a little music set up, and I'll even just playing music.
I've seen you on the ground, man.
Yeah, even just playing music or listening to music or writing. Like last night I wrote a verse and then I just stopped. Like I didn't know where else to go with it. And just bit by bit, I'll just keep adding to that and, you know.
Well, I hope we can hear it one day.
Oh God, I don't know. I don't really create it to have it come out.
Yeah.
Just do it as a,
Yeah.
if it's ever good enough, maybe.
Yeah, you see what they do? So style and identity go hand in hand. And whose sense of style and identity do you admire?
So for me, growing up, I think it was really, and still today, I mean, it's Pharrell. I think Pharrell, not only being, again, working in two different worlds, being one of the greatest producers, I think, of our time, but then his collaborations and seeing how he's worked with different brands and really created this incredibly iconic image. For me, he's someone to follow.
And he never ages. He looks 21.
Yeah, everyone's yeah.
I was just listening to Fronten this morning. It hasn't aged a bit.
No, and I think a lot of people don't realize a lot of the great music he's done for other people.
Yeah,
So,
Neptunes of no, it's.
And he's just come out with a skincare product, you know,
Has he?
because everyone wants to know what he's putting on his skin.
Yeah.
And so that's probably going to do well because everyone wants to be young.
I want some of that Pharrell concussion. So tell me your sense of style. What does it say about you? You know, people always will have opinions about style, and I just love the fact that in F1, there's no doubt that you're bringing it in terms of style. Every single time you have the opportunity to show what you like to wear.
I try to. I think we, well, in our world, in our sport, that it's very restricted. You know, you always be a team kit, you're in formal wear, you know, but I still try and play around with it. I think it took a long time for me. There's definitely, geez, I look back for a good period of time and a part of discovery, trying to feel how I wanted to present myself. You know, I remember when I first got to my first like F1 meeting, and when I was younger, I was crazy into hip hop, so it was baggy clothes, really into basketball, so I was like a lot of Jordan wear. And I remember turning up to a meeting and I had these baggy jeans on, and I remember being looked from head to toe and really feeling like the displeasing look that I'd had. This is not how an F1 driver should look like. And I remember getting home, my dad saying, "You've got to change." Then I wasn't able to be myself. And it's the worst thing, not being able to feel free in your own skin. And of course, I think everyone just needs to embrace their individuality and wear what you want.
And that matters as much as you winning on the track, because there are going to be boys and girls that see that and like, well, if Lewis Hamilton can do it, why can't I?
Yeah, I think it's the mental, that's one of the reasons I think that I'm able to be consistent and succeed in our job, is that I've managed to create these barriers where I don't post things to be judged, to see what people think of it. I don't need anybody's approval. This is who I am. This is how I like to dress. And I kind of walk my own walk. And then I get in and do my job. And then people are like, oh, how is he supposed to be over here? He was over in New York doing this shoot. There's no way he could fly from there to Singapore and perform this way. Why'd you let him do it? They asked my boss, how do you give him this freedom? And then I go and put in the best time that they've ever seen. And
look at the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. You know. So that's not easy to do, but
you do it. And again, you know, it leads me to this question on fashion. You know, what is there a look that you look back on, you're like, Lewis, WTF? How did I leave my house dressed that way?
Honestly, I don't look back very often. So it would be someone showing me a picture, and it would have been like my probably my early to mid 20s, probably. Somewhere. I definitely look at things where you have to conform, where I definitely conformed to what people expected. So when I was younger, going to awards, having to wear suits, that's why I love Pharrell. Like, he goes in whatever he wants.
Whatever he wants,
And I remember I look back at those and I'm like, God, I wish I didn't. Why did I wear that dicky bow?
It wasn't you, right? It wasn't you.
No, it just wasn't comfortable. Now I generally go in what I want, and but of course, being in the position I'm in now, I can kind of get away with it. But you know,
you're the most successful F1 driver ever. Do you feel you have to be successful at whatever you do outside of motor racing because of this incredibly, high sense of performance that you do in your own sport?
Honestly, I think everything I do, I think if I apply myself, I know by applying myself the way I have to my sport, I could be good at many different things. And that's never gonna change. So whatever I have to move on to, I'll apply it. I'm super determined. I have a good work ethic, but I don't think the pressure it would be anywhere near as much as when I was younger. Mm-hmm. I think the pressure, as I said, you've got to enjoy the journey.
Yes. And speaking on journey, what is this next phase in your life and career going to be? Everyone is watching, and you've reached what seems to be the pinnacle, right? So
yeah.
What's next?
I don't know. I think, like everyone, I think I'm one day at a time. I'm still trying to navigate through this beautiful thing we call life. Mm-hmm. And I don't get it all wrong. I don't have a crystal ball. Mm-hmm. One thing that last year, particularly, probably the most important year I think in my life, because it was like the climax of all these years of belief that my dad and myself and I had in what we were doing. And then on top of that, the whole thing with George, the whole movement that started, the finally having an opportunity to really speak out on something. Because I think for me, if I had spoken up, I had been trying to speak out about the fact that my team and the sport was not diverse, but it was just glanced at, wasn't taken serious. And last year gave us a real microphone to speak about it. And I really felt that I've really found part of my purpose. Yep. So even beyond my driving, I've got a job to hold the people in my sport accountable to make sure that they really follow through on the things that they said they were going to do last year. I've got to hold myself accountable, make sure that my team is diverse, that I'm hopefully creating opportunities and pathways for, we're all shooting stars, mm-hmm. and we've got to let people get in our slipstream and come
absolutely.
up
I love
through.
that. Yeah.
I don't really know what other business I'm going to get into. I like the fact that it could be anything.
Well, speaking of business, I think you invested in a vegan burger business in 2019.
I did, yes.
Yeah, so...
that's a part of a journey that I've been on in terms of going vegan, understanding, becoming more and more conscious of the impact that I'm having on the world, and health and well-being, which is invaluable. It's the most precious thing we have is our health. The world the climate issue is a serious issue, and so it's really interesting to see the new technologies coming out, the new food, and I haven't had McDonald's for God knows how long, but I know how unhealthy that is, and so I was really stunned at this project, and I wanted to be a part of it, and it's been amazing, the support from so many people in London. It's really cool to see something grow and be a part of something like that.
Amazing. There's a great quote I love that could be applied to vegetarians and vegans by William Ing, and it says, if our furry friends could formulate a religion, they would depict man as a devil. And it made me really, really think of what we've done to the rest of the animal kingdom.
Yeah, it's tragic.
Right, so what is the biggest misconception about you, sir?
I really don't know, because I don't read a lot about what's going on, and I think that's really to protect myself mentally. So I think if you're constantly reading comments, if you're constantly reading stories, everyone has an opinion, and doesn't mean any of them are right. What's important is that I know my values, I know the people around me that I'm working with know me, and what happens is when you get to, as I said, when people tune in today, they see me succeeding. They don't see all the work that goes on in the background, and that's the same probably for everyone. Yep. The story of where we came from and where we started is a lot different to a lot of the people that I race against. There are a lot of things that I struggle with. Like I'm not good behind the camera. I freeze up. Like I have massive anxiety. Like if I go on stage, I never want to be on stage. Just go and get the award for me, or or do the speech for me. I think people sometimes struggle to understand when you're racing in that intense environment. Emotions are so high. You say all sorts. Just
sure.
like maybe in an argument, you say things perhaps you don't mean. But again, I don't really know what. I'd hope that people over time will just know me as a hard out and out racer.
What we saw last year was, from my point of view, and a lot of people that are allies in this anti-racist movement, sure you stand, and sometimes alone, standing up for what you believe in, and that was really, really important.
I think last year was one of the most proudest things for me was, for example, taking the knee. It was really I really wanted particularly the black community to know, hey, I hear you and I'm with you all the way. And, also I've suffered in silence growing up and quiet, and all those emotions that came up last year, and now I finally got the platform and the power to really create change.
Yep.
And that for me is means so much more than all these championships, these wins.
Wow.
And
wow, I got goosebumps. I'm so proud of you for you even being able to sit here and say that.
Thank you.
That matters.
I really appreciate it.
All the GOATs, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, I'm putting in Muhammad Ali. What do you think, and you are in this category, sir, and do not let humility hold you back on that. But now you've reached that rare airspace, what do you think you all have in common?
Well, for example, with Michael, who's been a fan with since I was a kid, we obviously just saw his documentary, and I'm sure that was a real reminder of just how great he was, but also the single-minded focus that you have to have in order to do what you do, to be great.
And sacrifice, right?
And sacrifice. So I think I look at a lot of athletes out there, and there are so many similarities, and the respect is increased because you're like, I can only imagine how tough it is. For example, Serena, one of the few black women in tennis, but they're all going through their own struggles. We're all incredibly and fiercely competitive. None of us like losing. There are so many similarities, but what's really, really interesting is looking at all the different people and what they're doing once they get to the success. Because that's once you have it, what are you going to do?
Yep. It's and that's where greatness comes from. Muhammad Ali, yes, he was amazing in the ring, but I think he became GOAT because of what he did outside of the ring.
Absolutely.
And that's really in terms of, what you are doing. I do, and I said this when we had our last conversation, I wonder whether history will remember you more for what you did on the track or more for what you did for what you stand for. Both are great.
Well, honestly, it's not an easy walk. Again, you were mentioning it can be lonely, and it's a minefield. One false, if you get the word wrong, or if you say something, it's just taken out of context. It's really, I think it's quite difficult. So a lot of people maybe shy away from. They have good intentions, but also they have a bunch of people in the background says,
handlers,
stay quiet, don't do that. And fortunately, I'm just not wired that way. I've been getting in trouble since I was a kid. So.
You've been swimming upstream for a while, right?
Yeah.
So when you're going a gabillion miles an hour, in a very important race, is it possible for you to just think about anything else, like what you're going to have for supper, or what you're going to get your mum for Christmas, or
not in the race, unfortunately. I would say that in practice sometimes you can, because it can be kind of tedious. But never in a race.
As we're recording this, I'm going to make sure the Briones family hear you say this. I don't think anyone's heard you speak, that you basically, you won that race for her, right?
Yeah.
And that again matters, it matters.
I mean, so many people. I'm just trying to do my part. I think we're all just trying to do our part, aren't we? And we're all the same, regardless. The problem today, I think we have to all be challenging ourselves and asking ourselves these difficult questions of how we treat one another, whether it's dependent on the color of their skin, whether it's dependent on their sexual orientation or their religion. And I dream, and it could sound silly, but I really dream of one day it being equal for everyone. And no matter where you come from, where you start from, having an equal opportunity. and not being disadvantaged already from the day you're born.
Yep.
You know, but that's another story.
That's another story. But you know, look, I'm trying to tell the world that we must look at our own light through my pictures, through my storytelling. You're doing it in many ways, and as we climb, we lift.
Yeah.
As we climb, we lift.
Well, I just want to acknowledge you, and storytelling is so important, and that what you're able to capture tells a story for so many different individuals. Every day I see you post something different, I'm like, wow, it impacts me. So just imagine how many people you're impacting. So please don't stop. Yeah, keep going. It's a real pleasure and honor to shoot with you and work with you. So easy, you make the shoot so quick. Make me feel like I'm a professional, and I'm not.
No, I said, humility, too much. Thank you, Lewis, thank you. As always, I enjoy just shooting the breeze with you, mate.
And you.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.